Hello everyone, this is the final exam review video. The summer term, because it's condensed, is difficult enough without it being asynchronous, and then add to the top of that the strike problems, and it's been chaotic to say the least, but we can get through this. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to look at the practice exam and talk about it a little bit. In preparation for this year's final. Then I would like to also go through the slides, the lecture guide slides, and we'll key on the things that I think you should be looking to study a little harder for the final. Okay, and that being said, the final exam, I think the first thing you have to realize is that there are 15 terms on there, and it's unlikely, given the number of terms available, that I'm going to redo any of those. However, you should be able to go through them, and hopefully you've done the exam, and that way you'll have an idea of how well you're being able to grasp the material. Enough said about that. We're moving on to Part B. Now, the thing to remember is this practice exam, I've put a lot in there, so the final exam will not actually be this long. This is for practice purposes. So we have this little scenario beginning in Part B. And question one, because I really am big on Drucker and his types of innovative search mechanisms, that was important in the previous year. It's unlikely that I will have a 10-mark question on the same topic. However, I could move the Drucker material down and make it a 5-mark question in Part B. So I'm not going to go through that. You can look at it and see what I was talking about. Now, question number 2, the trio wish to protect their ideas. This will be on the exam. It's got to be, okay? You know, you're starting off a business and you have this idea and you want to protect it. How do you do it? So it will be on this exam, and you should key on that. Question 3, last term, and I'm just looking at it, so pardon me for not looking into the camera. What are 5 components of a business plan? Not likely to ask that again here. However, I've got to look for a package of material for the question 1 in Part B, which is large enough to make a 10-mark question out of it. So I think business plans, a more exhaustive question on business plans is a possibility. Obviously, I could move intellectual property up from a 5-mark question to a 10-mark question by making it a much more comprehensive example. Business financing, very important in this course, and we've gone over it in class and in my videos, and it's covered very well in the book. Could easily be a 10-mark question, and of course the other thing that's really important is sole proprietorships, partnerships, and corporations, looking at the liability under those and the advantages and disadvantages of them. So those are possible Part B exam questions for question 1 in Part B. Moving back to the questions on the practice exam, question 4 is, are the advantages and disadvantages of incorporating a business? So that would be one part of the 10-mark question if I decided to move it up. I just put slides 92 to 94 on there. You can look it up yourself. But the question ends with, explain why the disadvantage of excessive government regulations is not really a problem. And that is because in private corporations, which most of us will wind up doing, there is very little in the way of regulatory requirements. So that's just not a problem. The next one, question 5, list 5 sources of and indicate one disadvantage associated with each. 5 sources of financing. Whew. There's a word missing there. Equity financing. Somebody invests in your business by buying shares. They want some sort of control. Either it'll be control over voting, or it'll be control in the sense that they want dividends and they want return on capital, and they may want to have the shares redeemable, which means they can actually say, hey, I want out of here, and make you pay them out. Loans, obviously, there's a lot of strings attached to loans. You have to pay principal, you have to pay interest. If you miss those, they can call the loans and bring your business to its knees. Assignment of book debts. The disadvantage here is you have $180,000 of receivables. Well, you go to the bank and you say, hey, I want to assign these to you so I can get money now, buy more products, sell it, and continue to grow rather than wait for those receivables to be paid. The bank isn't going to give you $180,000 for $180,000. Number one, they want to make a profit, so they'll probably give you $160,000. And number two, they'll make some sort of allowance for bad debts. So that's a drawback. PPSA is the taking the equipment as security for a business. Once you've done that, the equipment's tied up, which means that whoever's lent you the money you will restrict your ability to sell that equipment, and so that's a problem. Credit cards, that's another source of financing where there's a real problem. They have very high interest rates. If you get behind your principal, there's compounding interest. The interest that you've missed adds to the principal, and then you have to pay interest on that as well. So that's deadly. Same thing with mortgage financing. If the loan that's given to a business is by way of a mortgage, well, if you miss payments, the payments you've missed, the interest is added to the principal, and you pay what's called compound interest. Question number 5, list 5 types of information which might be included in the appendices of a business plan. No big problem there. List 5 things you might do to use your lawyer's time or banker's time effectively. Slide 112. Obviously very important, but I'm not going to go into it because you can just read that yourself. Risk management, that's the whole purpose of business plans, for example. You do a business plan, so, oh, wait, we're not going to make any money, so let's eliminate the risk by not proceeding with the idea. Reducing and managing risk, quality control in the production of products, HR management to make sure you have good employees, that sort of thing. If it was the fantastic floaters, which is the was that the topic up here? Fantastic floaters, yeah, fantastic floaters. Then you want to have warning labels. Warning, this is for an adult, not children, those sorts of things. You can shift the risk, which means incorporate, so that the corporation is liable and you're not personally. You can shift the risk by getting lots of insurance, and you can also shift the risk by having waivers of liability, although selling a product, that would be hard to do because you wouldn't be able to get them executed. So nix that thought. Retaining risk, well, you got a great idea and you have a good chance of making money. There's risks out there, but you just decide to go ahead and do it. List 5 characteristics of an ideal business. We didn't get into that in a big way. It was on last year, so it's not likely to be on again. So there's a heads up. Okay, and then we get into part C, and this will be on your exam. It's a problem, and you have to go through and you have to indicate entrepreneurial issues and providing corresponding principles. So in other words, just so you don't just say, oh, there's an issue here with no business plan, or a business plan is an issue. Well, the fact that they don't have one is, you have to explain it a little bit. So we have 3 people that have a partnership, and they're making all sorts of sports clothing, or hats rather. And at an event, hey, Drucker, somebody sees something and they go, oh, wait a minute, there's a really good idea. So it's you'd have to indicate what Drucker category that would fall under. And then they approach their bank and they do a lousy job. Okay, so number 1, there's no business plan. Number 2, they're not using their banker's time effectively. And so you would have to put that down, plus flesh it out by saying those things that they should have done. And then number 3, knowing the 5 C's of credit. That's really important. That'll be on the exam somewhere. And then they start looking for financing. They get love money. Okay, that's the money from the family member, and the money is like totally at risk. So for the family member, then they decide that they're going to hold off on paying for their accounts payable. 30, 60, 90 days. Push it out until somebody screams at you, and then pay them. Well, that's bootstrapping. Okay. And then they decide that, well, our accountant says we should incorporate. Let's go see a lawyer. No. Let's save money. Let's not go to a lawyer. Let's do it ourselves. Obviously, there's some real problems here. Who does it? Clarence said he could do it, and then he goes off and he incorporates under the Federal Business Corporations Act. Well, it's not a federal business, so that's a problem. Then they go to see their lawyer. And they say, hey, we're partners in a business. No, you never say you're a partner in a corporation, okay? You incorporate a company because it gives you limited liability. And then you say, I'm a partner, and you get sued, and the person says, well, hey, I thought they were partners, so I'm suing them personally, and that makes them jointly liable for the debts and obligations of the business, and jointly and severally liable for the torts of the business, okay? So you don't want to do that. They didn't use the lawyer's time effectively. They didn't get to the lawyer on time. They incorporated a company themselves and then say, how do we do? Bad. There are no constituting documents, and that is something that Cam McClelland, one of our guest speakers, talked about. You have to make sure that you not only incorporate your company online if you do it yourself, but you want to make sure that the constituting documents are set up correctly. What are those? Well, the constituting documents are the resolution of the shareholders appointing directors and issuing shares, appointing directors, and then the resolution of the directors issuing shares, and you have to have consents of the directors to act as directors. You have to have subscriptions for shares. You actually have to do the share certificates, and that's about it. Okay, so those are your constituting documents. I didn't flesh those out there. Hopefully you did take notes in class because that could be on the exam. What additional document did the lawyer recommend? If there is a partnership, you should have a partnership agreement. Okay, if there is a corporation, you should have a shareholders agreement. Okay, not long after the meeting with the lawyer, they get confirmation that the business has been incorporated under the name Clap Hat Manufacturing Sales Corp. Businesses end in Corp. Or Inc. or Ltd. So now they're happy, but they're upset about the bill. Well, again, not using your lawyer's time effectively because you should be frank about accounts. And then we get into the financing. Okay, so we've got a building owned by the business. There's a mortgage on it, but it's been paid down a bit, which means they've, built up equity in the property so they could get a second mortgage on that. The equipment is unencumbered, so you can get a personal property security agreement on that, which used to be called a chattel mortgage. They have a lot of material in process, so you can get a Section 427 Bank Act charge on the material. You can have an assignment of book debts. Those are the accounts receivable. I'm just going to make a correction there because I typed in something wrong. Okay, they have, some of them have shares in Stardos and Microhard. You can you can pledge those shares. It's called hypothecation. You can pledge those shares in return for money. There's a vacant lot owned by two of the people. Well, you cannot get a mortgage on that, because a business mortgage would be on business equipment, but this isn't owned by the business, so you have to get a collateral mortgage. Okay, it's a mortgage on some collateral outside of the business. Cash surrender values of the insurance policies, assignment of the warehouse receipts, and although I didn't point it out specifically, there is a potential for getting personal guarantees because it doesn't appear as though the banks have buttoned that up. Okay, and then they go to lunch and they're arguing over, I'll use my card. No, I got American Express. I got Visa. I got ChargeX or what do they call it now? I don't know. Anyway, well, you can max out your charge cards. Okay, and that's basically the end of the practice exam. If you've got any questions about that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a wide open Zoom session where you can just drop in and ask questions and leave. Okay, and it'll only be for an hour. And if you are, oh man, I missed it, but I've got a really important question. Well, then you just email me and I'll set up a Zoom session, a personal Zoom session with you. And if it's something simple, I'll probably just answer it in the email. Okay, so that is the last year's exam, and now what I want to do is let me just go through the my lecture guide and just talk about some of those things you should key on. Well, right off the bat in section 3, there's a diagram, and that could be a Part B exam question because I could say fill in the blanks on the diagram. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, there are capabilities that you need. Some are embedded in your genes, and then there's some that are learnable. Okay, so you might want, there could be a question on that. Assessing your personal balance sheet. There's some things you can do. And it's on slide 23. Okay. Let's see, where do we go from here? On slide 30, there are 5 things that you can do to instill a more ethical atmosphere in your business. And 5, my gosh, that could be a 5-mark Part B question. And then we get into exploring ideas. There could be a Drucker question on there, but I'm not likely to repeat it. Okay. Feasibility study. There are 7 components to a feasibility study. I could easily say what are 5 of those. SWOT analysis. You should know about SWOT analysis. Let's see. Cost and profitability assessment. Yeah, I don't think we'll cover that. Okay, you got to know what a cash flow is. That's very important to me. Okay, the business plan, I said, could be a question 1 topic because there's a lot to it. For example, not only the elements of a business plan, but what are the 3 reasons for a business plan? Well, number 1, it's risk management. Okay, very important. Number 2, it's be prepared to make adjustments because this is a work in process, so it's not a one-time document that you then set on the shelf and it gathers dust. And then the other reason, of course, is you're going to seek debt and equity financing. 7 deadly sins of business plans. That's particularly important. I'm going to be looking at that when I do your business plan marking, which I'm a little behind on, but I'll get it done as quickly as possible. The biggest difficulty is just getting my hands on your business plans. Legal considerations, again, sole proprietorships, unlimited liability, partnerships, joint liability, and joint and several liability, corporations, limited liability, but as long as you do your due diligence. And one of the things about your doing due diligence is signing documents correctly. So a corporation signs under the corporate name, there's a line per in front of it, and then you have authorized signatory underneath it. And that indicates that you're signing on behalf of the corporation. So this is the concept of agency law, and it's slides 95 and 95 and 96. Intellectual property, there's 5 types. There's trademarks, which can be protected 2 ways, okay? It can be protected by registering a trademark and suing for trademark infringement, and it can be an unregistered trademark and you sue for passing off. Then there's copyright, if there's a manual or some artistic element. But a logo, for example, which has an artistic element, is protected by trademark, not by copyright, okay? Patents and industrial designs and NDAs. Find a lawyer you like. There's 9 bullets. Good Part B exam question. What are 5 things you can do to use your lawyer's time effectively? And then we're into the financing. The 5 C's of credit you gotta know. Using your lawyer's time effectively, you've got to know. Those are slides 112 and 113. And then the methods of raising capital, which are the following slides, are really important. Okay. We did not do a lot on buying a business or buying a franchise. I think the only term that is really important to me is the concept of contingent liabilities, which is on slide 131. If you buy a business and it's incorporated, do not buy the corporation, because you're going to wind up buying the contingent liabilities. Okay. All right. Now let me see on the sheet here. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? Nope, that's it. So it's not a long video, but you've got some studying to do before the exam, and I'll see you on June 20th in class, unless the picketers beat me up, although I haven't seen the picketers lately. Anyway, we'll get through this. Thank you very much for your patience, and I will see you next week. One short addition, sorry about that. Hopefully you've done the practice exam ahead of time, and if you didn't, it's going to affect your grade. It's not good to see what I did and then say, oh yeah, I understand that, because I'm not going to be there telling you the answers on the exam. You have to figure them out yourself. So hopefully you've done it ahead of time. If you haven't, then do it anyway as practice, and I am also going to post to eLearn the answer key for the practice exam. Thanks a lot.